There's a strange truth about sickness. It's not always about germs or accidents or even bad luck. Sometimes sickness is a whisper, a quiet way your body says what your voice cannot dot. Think about it. How many times have you caught something right after weeks of pushing yourself too far? How often have you felt exhaustion turn into a cough, a headache turn into days in bed, as if your body was finally putting up a do not disturb sign you ignored for too long? Sickness isn't just a breakdown, it's also a boundary. And your body, for all its complexity, is deeply patient, until it ints single quotes. Inside you, there's a system that remembers every sleepless night, every meal skipped, every unspoken resentment, every hidden stress. It doesn't forget. And when that balance tips, it calls in its ancient army inflammation, fever, fatigue, not as punishment, but as a desperate rescue mission. Modern science calls it the immune response, but to your cells, it's more like a homecoming. Because when you're sick, the body stops everything else. It cancels meetings. It clears your schedule. It forces you to do the thing you've been avoiding for months. Rest. What if, instead of seeing sickness only as the enemy, we could also see it as a teacher? What if every fever was a story, every ache a clue? What if your body's illnesses weren't just bad luck, but love letters written in a language you never learned to read? Tonight, we're going to slow down. We'll explore the science of sickness, the real biology, but through the lens of meaning. We'll walk through the immune system's hidden strategies, the way stress becomes physical, the silent battles your cells fight every second, and we'll uncover the life lessons hidden inside them, how illness can reveal your limits, reshape your priorities, and remind you that you are not a machine. This isn't a lecture. It's a gentle story about you and the body that has been keeping you alive through everything. Before we begin, take a moment to breathe. This will be slow, calm, and quietly eye-opening. If you've been moving fast all day, let this be your permission to stop. If this kind of gentle science meets storytelling helps you sleep a little easier, consider subscribing to the Sleep Academy. Not for the clicks, but so you can return whenever your mind feels restless. Share this with someone who's been pushing themselves too hard lately. They might need to hear it tonight. And if you feel like it, tell me in the comments, when was the last time your body told you to slow down? All right. Let's begin to learn the science of sickness. Chapter 1. The first signal. When the body whispers, it doesn't begin with a sneeze, or a fever, or the ache that makes you finally reach for the medicine cabinet. It begins much earlier in the quiet, unnoticed corners of your life. Long before the first symptom, your body feels the shift, like a fisherman sensing the change in the tide before the waves swell, like an old house hearing the faintest creak before the storm arrives. We live most days without noticing these first signals. You might chalk them up to a late night, a skipped meal, a stressful morning. You push them aside because the world demands you keep moving. But your body is already preparing for battle. The first signs of sickness are rarely loud. They are more like whispers that pass through you in ways you've been trained to ignore. Maybe it's the heaviness in your eyelids before dinner, or the slight pressure at the back of your neck, or a strange, unshakable thirst that makes no sense on a cool day. These are not random. They are messages. Inside you, a microscopic network is already at work. Immune cells patrolling your bloodstream, checking the ID of every stranger they meet. They've noticed something. Maybe a fragment of a virus that slipped in when you touched a doorknob. Maybe a bacteria that drifted in with the air you breathed, maybe a single mutated cell that doesn't belong. And so, without you knowing, they start to talk. Not in words, but in chemical messages, tiny molecular notes passed between them at impossible speed. Cytokines, interferons, chemokines. Names that sound technical, but in truth they are the gossip of your inner world, spreading the rumor that something is not right. But here's the strange part. Your body doesn't sound the alarm all at once. It tests the waters. Think of it like a candle flickering in a dark room. At first the flame is steady, holding its ground. Then the smallest breeze makes it sway. The wick sputters, but it's still lit. This is what happens inside you. Tiny shifts in energy, changes so small you almost feel guilty for thinking you might be getting sick. And yet, if you were to stop and listen, you'd feel it. That quiet shift, that subtle offness that no thermometer could measure. Modern medicine often teaches us to think of illness as something that happens to us suddenly. But the immune system has no such illusions. It's been watching for days, even weeks. Sometimes, what you call coming down with something is actually the final stage of a plan that's been unfolding silently. Your body is like a city that never sleeps. Every cell has a role, a job, a routine. And when trouble comes, that city starts to rearrange itself. Streetlights dim, roads close, food stalls pack up early, and most importantly, the guards double their watch at the gates. This is the first signal, a shift in how your body allocates its energy. One by one, non-essential processes slow down. You may not notice the small drop in focus when you're reading, or the way your muscles feel just slightly heavier when you climb the stairs. But these are signs that your body is rerouting resources toward defense. Some people ignore these whispers their entire lives. Others have learned often through hardship to pay attention. In some indigenous healing traditions, there's a belief that the body speaks in 3 voices. The first is a whisper, the second is a shout, and the third is a scream. If you listen to the whisper, you rarely have to hear the scream. Modern science has its own version of this wisdom. We now know that inflammation, fatigue, and temperature changes can appear hours or even days before a pathogen is detectable by common tests. We also know that people who learn to rest at the whisper often recover faster than those who push until they collapse. But our culture doesn't reward whispers. It rewards grit. It rewards showing up sick and calling it dedication. It rewards ignoring the body's first signals until it's too late to ignore anything at all. Imagine your body as a wise old friend, someone who has been keeping you alive since before you could speak, someone who knows storms before they arrive. Every time you feel that sudden, unshakable drowsiness, that slight ache behind your eyes, it's this friend putting a gentle hand on your shoulder, saying, "It's time to slow down. Something is coming." Sometimes, of course, your body whispers and the storm passes. The immune system neutralizes the threat before you ever know it was there. The soldiers never march. The city goes back to its usual rhythm. Other times, the whisper is just the first page of a story you can't skip. And as the hours pass, the signals will grow louder. Your body will shift from quiet preparation to open war. You might remember a time, perhaps as a child, when you woke one morning with that strange in-between feeling. Not quite sick, but not quite well. The air seemed heavier. The sunlight felt sharper. Your appetite faded without explanation. Your parents might have said you were coming down with something, but what was actually happening was far more. Intricate, an army of white blood cells multiplying, messengers rushing to every corner of the body, barriers strengthening at your skin and mucous membranes. You were becoming a fortress. In that moment, you were living proof of something science has long known. The immune system doesn't wait for full-blown sickness to act. It's proactive, strategic, and deeply wise. Even now, as you sit here listening, there are likely battles being fought inside you that you will never feel. A handful of viral particles might be meeting their end in the acidic depths of a white blood cell. A rogue bacterium might be dissolving under the enzymes of a neutrophil, and you will never know it happened because your immune system whispers and moves on. The problem is, most of us have trained ourselves to drown out those whispers. We drink more coffee. We work late. We scroll our phones under the covers when we should be sleeping. We tell ourselves it's nothing, and maybe it is nothing, until it ice in single quotes. You can think of this first signal like a crack in the dam. It might hold, it might not. But if you're wise, you'll notice the sound of water trickling before the flood comes. One of the most remarkable things about the body is its ability to communicate without language. Consider fever, a signal as old as life itself. A mild rise in temperature is often one of the earliest signs that your immune system has detected a threat. It's not the sickness itself. It's the body creating conditions that make it harder for invaders to thrive. Even a change as small as 0.5 degrees can tip the balance in your favor. Then there's inflammation, redness, swelling, heat. Not just a reaction, but a carefully orchestrated defense mechanism meant to wall off danger and focus healing. And yet, the first signs of inflammation are often invisible. A slight stiffness, a vague soreness, a subtle shift in how you carry yourself. These are the whispers. The cues you've been taught to dismiss as nothing. So, why does this matter? Because listening to the whisper gives you options. When you notice the first signal, you can give your body what it needs before the full war begins. Rest, hydration, a pause from the constant demands you place upon yourself. And in doing so, you may spare yourself days, even weeks of recovery. You may let the immune system win its battle quietly, without ever having to call in reinforcements, like antibiotics or extended bed rest. But there's another reason, deeper still. When you listen to the first signal, you're not just preventing sickness. You're honoring the relationship between you and your body. You're saying, I hear you, I trust you. I will not wait for you to scream before I pay attention. That small act of respect can ripple through everything else, because the more you listen, the more fluent you become in your body's language. You start to notice not just sickness, but stress, burnout, even emotional wounds that manifest physically. And that's where the story turns toward the next chapter. Because once the whisper grows louder, once the body realizes the threat will not fade on its own, it shifts from preparation to full engagement. The immune system stops being subtle. It summons its armies. It turns quiet patrols into open confrontation. If the first signal is the flicker of a candle, the next is the sound of 1,000 footsteps in the dark, the soldiers of your inner world, marching to meet an enemy you'll never see. Next, in Chapter 2, The War You Never See, we'll step inside that hidden battlefield. You'll meet the scouts, the messengers, the warriors. You'll watch them fight, not with swords or fire, but with chemistry and precision that makes even the greatest human armies look clumsy. And you'll discover that the war inside you is not just about survival. It's about remembering what you were made of. Chapter 2, The War You Never See. It begins without fanfare. There is no drumbeat, no blaring trumpet to announce the battle. The war you are about to witness is quieter, stranger, and infinitely more precise. You won't feel the moment it starts. It will happen deep in your blood, in the hidden chambers of your tissues, in microscopic spaces where light itself cannot reach. And yet, in those shadows, a war unlike any fought on earth will unfold. By the time you notice you are sick, the battlefield has already been chosen. The first signal, that whisper from your body, was not ignored. It was answered. Your immune system is no longer simply watching. It is moving. Imagine, for a moment, a vast city built from your own flesh. Every street is lined with houses of living cells. Rivers of blood flow through it like busy highways. And hidden in those streets are the sentinels, the immune scouts, who have been walking their silent patrols every second of your life. These scouts have many names: macrophages, dendritic cells, natural killer cells. They are not beautiful in the way flowers are beautiful, but in the way that a storm is beautiful, purposeful, unstoppable, ancient. One of these sentinels has just made a discovery. A fragment of a virus clings to the surface of a cell like a counterfeit badge. The sentinel leans in at a scale so small it defies imagination and takes a sample. It sniffs out danger through chemical signals. The alarm is not shouted. It is whispered into the bloodstream, where it will echo everywhere. This is the immune response, a communication network faster than any internet, older than any language. Cytokines are released, acting as both a rallying cry and a warning. Nearby blood vessels dilate, allowing more immune cells to flood the area. The temperature of the tissue rises, making it less hospitable to intruders. You might feel this as warmth in your skin or a subtle ache, but in truth, it is the heat of battle, the fires lit by your own cells to weaken the enemy. And then, the army arrives, neutrophils, the first responders of your immune system, surge through the blood like a wave breaking on the shore. They do not hesitate. They engulf bacteria, break apart viral particles, and then, like kamikaze warriors, die in the act. Their short lives are spent entirely in service of your survival. Behind them come the monocytes, slower but more deliberate. They will grow into macrophages, swallowing enemies whole and dismantling them with acid and enzymes. Nothing escapes their patience. And then, from the deepest reserves, lymphocytes are called. These are the special forces of your immune system, B cells and T cells, each trained to recognize a specific target and eliminate it with precision. If you could see this war, it would not look like the battles you know from history books. There are no uniforms, no banners. It is a war of shapes and keys, of locks being broken and doors being sealed shut. A virus, for instance, is nothing more than a key trying to fit into a lock it does not own. The immune system's job is to jam the lock, change its shape, or destroy the key entirely. And yet, the enemy is clever. Viruses hide inside your own cells, turning them into factories to make more copies of themselves. Bacteria coat themselves in slime to evade detection. Cancer cells disguise themselves as healthy, whispering, "I belong here," to the immune patrols. But your defenses are not easily fooled. Natural killer cells roam the body like detectives searching for liars. They peer into cells, and if they find the wrong patterns, missing identification tags, strange proteins, they mark the cell for destruction. All of this happens while you sleep, eat, walk, and work. The war never pauses for your convenience. You might feel it as fatigue, your body diverting energy away from your muscles and brain to fuel the fight. This is why rest matters during illness. Every ounce of energy you give to movement, to stress, to mental overdrive is energy taken from the immune front lines. Rest is not laziness. It is a tactical advantage. Sometimes the immune system fights too well. The very inflammation that protects you can become overwhelming, like a fire meant to burn away weeds but spreading into the garden. In medical terms, this is called a cytokine storm, when the body's own defenses become so intense that they begin to harm healthy tissue. This is the double-edged nature of the war inside you. The same weapons that save you can also scar you. It is why the immune system's greatest strength is not just its aggression, but its ability to know when to stop. And so, as the battle rages, another group of cells begins its work. The regulators. These are like wise generals, walking among the soldiers, telling them when to stand down. They release anti-inflammatory signals, rebuild damaged tissue, and guide the transition from war to peace. Healing is not the absence of battle. It is the transformation of it. There's a strange comfort in knowing that you were never truly alone in your sickness. At this very moment, as you listen, millions of tiny defenders are fighting for you without complaint, without hesitation, without asking for thanks. They do not see you as weak. They see you as worth protecting. And perhaps there's a lesson here, one that extends beyond biology. We, too, fight invisible wars for each other every day. We defend people in conversations they will never hear about. We keep certain truths from those who are not ready for them. We endure our own exhaustion so someone else might rest. The immune system, in its quiet, tireless way, is a mirror of that unseen loyalty. But the war is not fought on biology alone. For while your immune cells fight in the blood, your mind, your thoughts, your stress, your history is quietly influencing the tide of battle. Scientists have long known that chronic stress suppresses immunity, that grief slows healing, that loneliness can increase vulnerability to infection. These are not metaphors. They are measurable truths. The brain and the immune system speak the same language, using the same chemical messengers. Cortisol, adrenaline, serotonin, the same molecules that shape your mood, also shape your defenses, which means that the enemy is not always foreign. Sometimes, the greatest threat to your body's army is your own mind, and that is where our story turns next. Because you cannot truly understand the science of sickness without understanding the ways your thoughts and feelings can invite it or fight it. You cannot see the war without also seeing the weather it fights. Under the storms of stress, the cold winds of isolation, the droughts of unexpressed grief. Next, in Chapter 3, When the Mind Makes You Sick, we will explore the deep and delicate connection between your mental state and your physical health. You will see how stress reshapes immunity, how unhealed emotions can manifest in the body, and why the path to recovery sometimes begins not with medicine, but with the quiet work of tending to the heart. Chapter 3, When the Mind Makes You Sick. The war inside you is not only fought with cells and chemicals. It is shaped by something less visible, less measurable, but no less powerful, your mind. We often speak of stress, worry, and sadness as if they live entirely in the head, like clouds that pass above without ever touching the ground. But the truth is far more intimate. Every thought you have is not just an idea, it is a signal. Every emotion you feel leaves fingerprints on your body. When your mind shifts, your biology shifts with it. If you've ever blushed from embarrassment, felt your heart race before public speaking, or lost your appetite during grief, you've experienced this truth. Your thoughts don't just pass through you, they change you. And when the thoughts you carry are heavy for too long, the body begins to bend under their weight. In the language of science, this connection is called the psychoneuroimmunology. Link a long, complicated word for something simple. Your mind, your nervous system, and your immune system are in constant conversation. The brain releases hormones that tell the body how to respond to the world. If your mind believes you're in danger, your adrenal glands release cortisol and adrenaline to prepare you for fight or flight. This is useful when the danger is real and temporary. But when the danger exists only in your thoughts, an unpaid bill, an unresolved argument, a job you dread waking up for, the stress response stays switched on, sometimes for weeks, months, even years. And here's where sickness begins to take root. Cortisol, in short bursts, is protective. It can even boost immunity in the short term. But over time, too much cortisol dampens the immune system, shrinking the thymus where T cells mature, reducing inflammation control, and making it harder for your body to distinguish friend from foe. Long-term stress is like forcing your immune system to stand guard at the city gates without food, without sleep, without rotation. Eventually, the soldiers falter, the gates weaken. You become more vulnerable to infections. Small illnesses take longer to heal. Old injuries flare up again. Fatigue becomes a constant companion. Grief, too, leaves its mark. Studies show that those who lose a loved one have a significantly higher risk of illness in the months that follow. The immune system becomes sluggish, inflammation lingers, and the body, as if in solidarity with the heart, slows its defenses, and loneliness, often dismissed as just an emotion, is now understood as a biological stressor. People who feel chronically alone have higher levels of inflammation, weaker antibody responses, and slower wound healing. The body interprets isolation as a form of danger, an ancient echo of a time when to be alone meant to be unprotected. But perhaps the most insidious mind-body connection is the one that hides in plain sight. The way unexpressed emotions live on in the body. Think of a time you bit back tears in a meeting, or swallowed your anger to keep the peace, or told yourself you were fine while your chest felt tight, and your jaw ached from clenchying. These moments don't simply disappear. The tension they create is stored in muscles, in breathing patterns, in the way your nervous system learns to stay on high alert. Over time, that constant low-grade vigilance reshapes the body, making sickness not just more likely, but more lasting. Of course, this is not to say illness is all in your head. A virus is still a virus. A bacterium is still a bacterium. But your mind can influence whether your body greets that intruder with a sharp, decisive response, or a weary, delayed one. Your mental state can shape the terrain on which the battle is fought. A nourished, rested mind gives the immune system steady ground. A mind knotted with chronic stress creates quicksand beneath your defenses. One of the clearest examples of this can be found in sleep. When you are well rested, your immune system produces more natural killer cells and infection-fighting. When you're sleep deprived, whether from insomnia, overwork, or lying awake with looping thoughts, those levels drop dramatically, even after just one night. It's no coincidence that your body often demands sleep when you're sick. It's the most powerful immune booster you have, and it costs nothing but time. There's a story I once heard about a woman named Lila. She was in her late 40s, working long hours in a job that drained her, caring for an aging parent, and pushing aside her own needs without hesitation. She began catching every seasonal cold that passed through the office. Her doctor prescribed vitamins, recommended hand washing, and urged her to get more rest. But nothing changed until her father passed away. The grief was immense, but so was the shift in her life's demands. For the first time in years, she slowed down. She began walking in the mornings, cooking for herself, going to bed earlier. Months later, she realized she hadn't been sick once. The change hadn't been in her exposure to germs. It had been in the climate of her inner world. Her immune system had finally been given room to breathe. There's a tenderness in understanding this link between mind and body. It means that caring for your mental health is not selfish. It is part of caring for your physical health. It means that healing might come not only from medication, but from permission. Permission to rest, permission to say no, permission to grieve, to feel, to be human. Modern medicine is catching up to this truth. Some hospitals now offer mindfulness programs to patients recovering from surgery. Cancer treatment centers include stress reduction techniques as part of care plans. Researchers are studying how meditation, therapy, and social connection can improve immune function, and the results are undeniable. In one study, people who practiced simple daily mindfulness for 8 weeks showed increased antibody response to vaccines compared to those who didn't. In another, patients with chronic illnesses who attended support groups not only reported feeling better emotionally, but also recovered faster from unrelated infections. The science is clear. The immune system listens to the stories your mind tells. But what does this mean for you? Tonight, as you lie here listening, it means that the next time you feel a cold coming on, you might ask not just what did I catch, but what have I been carrying? It means that when you find yourself exhausted beyond reason, it might be worth looking at your thoughts as much as your body. It means you might begin to treat rest, joy, and connection not as luxuries, but as medicine. And yet, even with this knowledge, there's something humbling to remember. No matter how well you care for your mind, no matter how balanced, your life sickness will still come. It's part of the design, part of the rhythm of being alive. Because sometimes the body doesn't just need to defend itself, it needs to slow you down so it can heal you. And it has ways of making sure you listen. In the next chapter, we will step into that moment, the moment when the war quiets just enough for the body to change tactics, when fever, fatigue, and appetite loss are not failures, but strategies, when the body insists on stillness, not to punish you, but to save you. Next, in Chapter 4, The Healing Slowdown, we will explore the surprising wisdom behind the symptoms we often try to fight, why they exist, what they do for you, and how surrendering to them might be the most powerful thing you can do. Chapter 4, The Healing Slowdown. There's a strange paradox about healing that no one tells you at the start. When you begin to feel better, you expect everything to keep getting better. You imagine progress as a straight line, steady, unwavering, moving forward day after day. But healing rarely follows that pattern. Instead, it moves like the tide. Sometimes it rushes in, bringing rapid improvements that make you feel like the worst is over. Other times, it withdraws, leaving you stranded on the shore, unsure if you're really improving at all. The healing slowdown is that moment in your journey when the body and mind deliberately press the brakes. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you've been doing so much right. And now it's time for integration. Why the slowdown happens. To understand why this phase exists, we have to first step back and see healing for what it really is. a negotiation between your body's urgency to repair and its need to protect. When you first get sick or injured, your body goes into an all-hands-on-deck mode. White blood cells surge, inflammation spikes to clear out damage, hormones flood your system, redirecting resources toward the repair effort. It feels intense because it is. Intense, your body is working at full throttle. But that kind of pace can't last forever. If the repair process stayed at that same aggressive level, you'd burn out. Too much inflammation can harm healthy tissue. Too many stress hormones can weaken your immune system. So eventually your body eases back. This slowdown isn't a sign that your body has given up on healing you. It's a sign that it's switching from emergency repair mode to sustainable restoration mode, a slower, more deliberate phase where deeper healing can occur without causing new harm. The emotional shock of slowing down, here's where most people get confused and often discouraged. You start to feel better. Your symptoms ease. You get your energy back. Then, almost out of nowhere, you plateau. Or worse, you feel like you're sliding backward. That moment can trigger panic. What if I'm getting sick again? What if the progress was just an illusion? What if I'm stuck like this forever? But here's the truth. This slowdown is not a setback. It's part of the cycle. Think about it like rebuilding a house after a storm. The first phase is dramatic, clearing debris, fixing the roof, securing the walls. You can see progress every day. But then comes the slower work, rewiring the electrical system, replacing hidden water damage, strengthening the foundation. From the outside, it doesn't look as exciting. But without this stage, the house wouldn't truly be livable again. Your body works the same way. It's shifting from the quick fixes you can feel to the deeper repairs you can't. Repairs that take more time, more energy, and more patience. When the slowdown feels like failure, the danger in this phase isn't the slowdown itself, it's how we interpret it. Modern life has trained us to see constant progress as the only proof of success. We expect every day to be better than the last. We want graphs that point upward without a single dip. But nature doesn't work that way. Neither does healing. If you've ever been in physical therapy, you've seen this firsthand. Some weeks, your mobility improves noticeably. Other weeks, it feels like nothing is changing, or even like you're moving backward. But when you zoom out and look at the entire journey, those pauses were not wasted time. They were consolidation periods. Periods when your body was taking what it had learned, stabilizing the gains, and ensuring you wouldn't lose them when you moved forward again. The same applies to mental and emotional healing. Therapy breakthroughs might come in bursts, followed by weeks where it feels like you're just repeating yourself. But those weeks are often when your mind is laying new pathways, making the change permanent rather than fleeting. The biology of the slowdown. On a biological level, the healing slowdown is often tied to energy allocation. Your body has a limited pool of energy to spend each day. When you're in the acute phase of healing, almost all of that energy is directed toward repair. But as you improve, your body begins rebalancing, redirecting energy back toward digestion, cognitive function, hormone regulation, and all the systems that were partially paused during the crisis. This shift can make it feel like the repairs have stalled. But in reality, it's just your body multitasking again. There's also the role of the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode. This system dominates during the deeper healing phases. encouraging your body to slow down activity so tissues can rebuild at a cellular level. It's a quiet, almost invisible kind of work. No fireworks, no dramatic symptoms, but it's where the most profound restoration happens. The risk of pushing too hard. One of the biggest mistakes people make during this phase is mistaking the slowdown for weakness, and then trying to power through it. Maybe you've been off your feet for weeks and you finally feel well enough to get back to your old routine. You push yourself, work late, exercise hard, stay up too long, and then, suddenly, you crash. This is called post-exertional malaise. In some illnesses, when doing too much too soon causes a temporary relapse. Your body doesn't see this as punishment. It sees it as feedback. You're moving faster than your repair schedule allows. In healing, patience isn't a luxury, it's a requirement. Because if you skip the slow phase, you risk undoing the very progress you worked so hard for. The psychological weight of waiting. The slowdown tests something deeper than your biology. It tests your relationship with patience. We live in a culture that equates waiting with wasting time. We measure our worth by productivity. So when your body forces you to pause, it can feel like you're losing more than just momentum. You're losing part of your identity. This is where the mental battle begins. If you define yourself by how much you do, the healing slowdown will feel like an attack on who you are. But if you can see it as a lesson in being rather than doing, it can transform you in this quiet stretch. You learn how to measure progress in subtler ways, not by the number of things you check off a list, but by the depth of your rest, not by how fast you can walk again, but by how steadily you can breathe without pain. Learning to trust the quiet phase. Trust is the hardest skill to develop during healing. Trust that your body hasn't forgotten you. Trust that progress is still happening, even if you can't see it. You build that trust by paying attention to the small signs, the way your sleep feels, deeper the slight increase in your appetite, the absence of a symptom you used to wake up with every day. These changes are easy to miss if you're only looking for the big wins. But they are proof that the work is still being done just under the surface. It's like seeds in soil. Nothing appears to be happening above ground. But below, roots are forming, anchoring the plant so it can grow without being toppled by the first wind. Why the slowdown is a sign of strength. If you've reached this phase, it means your body is confident enough in its progress to ease the intensity. It trusts that the foundation is strong enough to handle the gentler pace. This doesn't mean you won't have hard days. In fact, you might still experience flare-ups, brief returns of old symptoms that seem to come out of nowhere. But those flare-ups are often just your body's way of testing its repairs, like a bridge being stress-tested before it's opened to the public. Your body is making sure its new systems can hold up under pressure. Embracing the slow lane, the healing slowdown, can be one of the most frustrating phases, but it can also be the most transformative, because when life forces you to slow down physically, you often slow down mentally too. You start noticing details you once overlooked. You start valuing rest in a way you never did before. And in that stillness, something unexpected can happen. You discover that healing isn't just about returning to who you were before. It's about becoming someone who understands the value of the pace. It's self-practical ways to support this phase. Shift your timeline. Instead of aiming for a rapid return to normal, allow your definition of normal to change as you go. Progress in this phase is measured in weeks and months, not days. Listen more closely. Symptoms in this stage are often subtler. Fatigue after social events, muscle tightness after mild exercise. Treat these as early warning signs to adjust, not as failures. Protect your energy. Even as you feel better, resist the urge to fill every spare moment with activity. Energy is your body's currency for healing. Spend it wisely. Stay consistent. Gentle routines like stretching, hydration, and balanced meals build stability that supports deeper repair. Celebrate the invisible wins. Keep a log of the small improvements you notice. Looking back over weeks or months will remind you that change is happening. Chapter 5. What sickness leaves behind. Illness never truly leaves without leaving something in its place. We tend to measure sickness only by the obvious, the fever, the rash, the cough, the scan result. We are trained to think of health as the absence of symptoms. But the truth is far quieter and far stranger. The real residue of sickness is not always something you can see on a lab report. Sometimes it lingers in the way you breathe, in the way you walk down the street, in the way your body tenses when you smell a certain scent, hear a certain song, or step into a certain season. It is as if illness leaves a shadow, a trace that follows you long after the light returns. And this shadow doesn't just live in the body, it lives in the mind, in the nervous system, and in the small, almost invisible choices you make every single day. The lingering echo in the body. When your body survives sickness, it doesn't simply erase the memory of what happened. Your immune system keeps records, chemical, cellular, molecular diaries of the war it just fought. Some of these records are useful. They help you recognize and fight the same threat faster if it returns. But others are less helpful. They keep your body on edge, suspicious, hypervigilant. Like a soldier who's come home but can't stop scanning the horizon for danger. You might notice it in subtle ways. You catch your breath more often. You tire more quickly than you used to. Your joints ache when the weather changes. A once easy movement now feels awkward, stiff, or cautious. These are not just random leftovers. They are signs that your body's systems, muscles, nerves, circulation are still recalibrating, still trying to remember how to live without the constant stress of defending you. Think of it like a city that's just survived a siege. The gates may be open again, trade routes restored, streets repaired, but the city's people still whisper about the attack. They still keep hidden stores of food, and the walls are rebuilt stronger than before. This is what your body does, too, an instinctive blend of resilience and caution, the subtle rewiring of the mind. But the shadow of sickness doesn't end in the body. Your mind also adapts, sometimes in ways you never notice until they begin to shape who you are. Maybe after an illness, you feel a faint unease in crowded places, or you hesitate before committing to plans that used to be second nature. It's not necessarily for it's a subconscious calculation. What if I get sick again? What if I'm not ready? The brain is a master of association. If you were bedridden during winter, snow might carry an invisible weight. If you spent weeks in a hospital, the smell of antiseptic might bring an involuntary tightening in your chest. This is not weakness. Is your nervous system trying to protect you? Psychologists call this learned caution. Biologists call it adaptive behavior. In truth, it is the same instinct that makes an animal avoid a plant that once made it ill, or a child recoil from a place where they once fell. It's not always logical, but it is always rooted in survival. The emotional imprint. Sickness also alters the emotional landscape of your life. When you're ill, You see the world through a narrower frame. You learn which people check in on you and which drift away. You discover how much of your daily life is built on the assumption that you will be healthy, enough to carry it. Some people emerge from illness with a greater appreciation for small joys, sunlight through a window, the taste of fresh fruit, the sound of laughter in another room. Others come away with a sharper edge of distrust toward their own body. The relationship between you and your body is one of the most intimate you will ever have, and, like any relationship, illness can either deepen the bond or strain it too. The point of fracture, the physical scars you can't see. We tend to think of scars as visible marks, lines on the skin, healed fractures on an X-ray. But some of the most enduring scars of sickness are invisible. A reduced lung capacity that makes stairs harder to climb. A change in how your immune system responds to everyday threats. A shift in hormone regulation after prolonged stress. Tiny changes in gut bacteria that subtly alter digestion, mood, and even thought patterns. These are the quiet legacies of illness, unseen, but deeply influential. They may not demand constant attention, but they shape the terrain of your life in ways you might never fully understand. Post-illness, fatigue, the slow return. One of the most common and most frustrating legacies of sickness is the prolonged exhaustion that follows. It's not simply being tired, it's the feeling that your energy supply has been permanently downsized. Doctors call it post-viral fatigue, chronic fatigue, or post-exertional malaise. Your body is no longer fighting the illness, but it's still in repair mode. NAND repair mode is energy intensive. It's like running a household on half the power supply. You can keep the lights on and the fridge running, but some rooms will stay dark for a while. This is where frustration can set in. The world expects you to bounce back. You expect yourself to bounce back. But the truth is, recovery is rarely a clean, upward slope. It's a jagged, unpredictable climb with sudden dips and plateaus. The psychological weight of after, for many, the most disorienting part of illness is not the sickness itself, but the after. When the crisis has passed and everyone assumes you are better, you are left carrying a private awareness that something inside you has changed. This is when existential questions begin to stir. If my body can fail me once, can it fail me again? What does it mean to trust my health? How do I live knowing I am more fragile than I thought? Some people answer these questions by becoming more cautious, others by living more intensely. Both responses are valid. Both are ways of making sense of what illness leaves behind. Resilience as a double-edged sword. We often speak of resilience as an unquestionable virtue, but resilience after illness can be complicated. Yes, you survived. Yes, you adapted. But sometimes the same walls you've built to protect yourself can also keep life at a distance. Think of someone who avoids deep emotional connections after heartbreak. They're safe from pain, but also from joy. The body can do the same, keeping you safe from overexertion, but also from the full range of experiences you once embraced without hesitation. True post-illness resilience is not just about surviving the next challenge. It's about learning to dismantle some of those walls when they are no longer needed. Learning to live with the shadow. Illness changes you. It may make you slower or softer or more aware. It may strip away layers of assumption and control you once took for granted. It may leave you with scars, but also with insight and understanding of the body's fragility and the mind's stubborn will to survive. The goal is not to return to the exact person you were before that person no longer exists. The goal is to live well with who you are now, to learn the new rhythms of your body, to honor the limits that protect you without letting them shrink your life into something smaller than it can be. The quiet gifts of recovery for all the hardship sickness brings, it can also leave behind certain unexpected gifts, a deeper connection to your own body's signals, a greater patience for slow days, a heightened gratitude for the ordinary, an ability to spot the difference between what is urgent and what is simply noise. These are not the gifts you would choose, but they are still worth holding on to, because they can shape the way you move through the world long after the illness itself has passed. What sickness leaves behind is never just weakness. It is a map of where you have been, record of battles fought and survived. It is a reminder that the body is both breakable and miraculous, that healing is not the same as erasing, and that life after illness is not about returning to before, but about building a new kind of after one in which the scars are part of the story, not the end of it. And so, the story of illness is never truly about sickness. Alone it is about transformation, about what your body learns, what your mind carries, and how you choose to live in the space between vulnerability and resilience. In the next and final part of our journey, we will gather these threads together. We will step back and see the whole picture, not just the moment sickness begins, or the fight it demands, or the shadow it leaves behind, but the entire arc of what it means to move from illness into life again, to stand in the quiet after the storm and ask yourself the question that will shape everything that comes next. Now that I have survived, how will I live? Write me the answer in the comments section. Good night.